Good evening, and welcome to our March webinar. My name is Becca Mackesy, and I'm happy to host tonight's webinar from Christian Brothers Conference and the Lasallian region of North America. Also joining me behind the scenes is Sarah Leighton, Director of Education and Formation, and we're thrilled to have you with us. I'm grateful for you all for making the time this afternoon or evening to join us and explore the topic of Gen Z students and how we can better support them at our ministries. It's a privilege to have Lasallians joining us from all across the country. Before we begin, just a few housekeeping notes. The chat section of the Zoom is open, and we encourage you to leave any comments or questions there, and Rashad will answer and respond to them at the appropriate moments. As a note, this webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing on our Lasallian Resource Center website, lasallianresources.org, We will provide you with a copy via the email you used to register when the link becomes available on the Resource Center for your viewing. You can find past webinars there as well, and future webinars as they are uploaded there. For now, it's my privilege to introduce today's presenter, Rashad Young, as he shares his insights about Gen Z. Rashad is a Lasallian educator, author, school counselor, psychology instructor, and mental health presenter at Christian Brothers College High School in St. Louis, Missouri. A proud CBC alumnus, Rashad embodies the Lasallian mission of teaching minds and touching hearts, guiding students through academic, emotional, and social development with compassion and intentionality. He holds a bachelor in educational studies, a master's in higher education, and a master's in clinical mental health counseling. Rashad has presented nationally at the Huther Lasallian Conference, the ERB Conference, the College Board Dream Deferred Conference, and the Webster Institute for Clinical Scholarship Symposium. His work focuses on helping educators understand the emotional landscape of Gen Z, the impact of digital culture on student well-being, and practical strategies to build supportive learning environments. Rashad is the creator of Rooted and Rising, a men's emotional wellness program dedicated to cultivating identity, resilience, and brotherhood among young men. Through his teaching, writing, and counseling, he continues to champion the Lasallian values of faith, service, and community while empowering today's students to feel seen, understood, and capable of thriving. Rashad, thanks for being with us, and I turn it over to you.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining. Rebecca, that was an amazing introduction. I appreciate it so much. For everybody joining, thank you. I really appreciate it to Roland for the opportunity. I appreciate it to any of my colleagues, family members, and friends. Thank you all for joining us well. We're about to go into the world of Gen Z. Give me 1 second. Okay. So this presentation is truly important to me in so many different ways. Over the past year, I've had the opportunity to do different variations on this topic. And this past November at the Huther Conference, I was able to present on this idea of Gen Z not being lazy or overwhelmed. Truthfully, I know to a lot of people, this leads to a lot of conversations, so many questions that we have, so many thoughts and variables. And I think truthfully, that's the most important thing about this topic. It's not about what exactly is right. It is what is meant to be curious, is to ask questions, and it's to create a better understanding for our students moving forward. For me personally, over the past few years, not only working here at CBC, but other areas of education, middle school, higher ed, elementary. I've had an opportunity to connect with this generation in so many different ways, and they've intrigued me in a way for us to create a better understanding. And I think this conversation, this webinar today is to help create that better understanding. And as Lasallians, I feel like it's very important because we have to remember that to touch the hearts of our students is the greatest miracle that we can perform. Every day, our students come to us as educators looking to be inspired, to answer questions, to give hope, to give inspiration. And so I know this group can be challenging. They can ask us a question. They can say things in ways that we don't understand their language. And we will discuss all that today. But I think we need to address the elephant in the room first. And that is the language of Gen Z. As you can see, that hoodie says 6'7". I know some of you all may have kids or students that have seen this or have said it, and it drives you crazy. It drives me crazy. And I'm sure many of you all may feel like this.
So, Riz is about having game. It's the vibe you put out.
Yes, the aura is the energy. It swirls around you like this.
I still don't get it.
Are we supposed to teach this?
When they say things like that, you're like, what are they saying? What does that mean? What is it that we're trying to get from that? And I think for us as educators, we have to understand that understanding the language is a vocation. Rather, it is saying things like 6'7" or Riz or so many other things that we can try to find on Google. It is something that's best for us to understand. If you were here at the Youth Conference, the thing that I did that I won't do here, unfortunately, is I went through a Gen Z boot camp where I put you all through a system of tests to really understand what the language means. Maybe you know about the language. Maybe you understand exactly what it means, and you're at the school level now where you're having conversations about what to do with this generation. It goes like this.
The quantum shuffle trend demands our attention for engagement.
This is frivolous. Our academic standards are falling.
Absolutely not. We are educators, not viral marketers.
So, being an educator and a viral marketer in today's time, two things can be true. As educators, we know the tradition of learning and teaching and inspiring, but also social media runs our world, technology and AI. And so many of us have school profiles to find ways to reach our students on the social web. We're finding ways to market our schools and programs. And so while we are educators, we are slowly becoming social marketers as well to not only show the beauty of our institution, but to also get students to come to our institution as well. That is the way of our world. That is how kids learn and connect. So the purpose of today's webinar is a few things. One is to create an understanding of Gen Z on a deeper level. Two is to navigate the challenges of working with Gen Z. And three is to prepare our schools and community for the future so we can turn confusion into connections. Now, even though this is a webinar, I cannot see your face. And I know a lot of you all doing amazing things out there. I am big on interaction, so I am going to need some interaction with you all with the chat feature. As Rebecca mentioned, there will be some question and answers. If there are a question that goes along with the slide, I may answer that during that moment. So, a quick check-in if you can. Please let me know what is your role in education. Are you a teacher? Are you a counselor? Are you an administrator? Or a learning specialist? I would love to see it in the chat. Okay, see administration, I see teacher, admin, okay. Therapist, love it. Love it. Love it. Beautiful. That's great. So I think, again, all of us have a very unique role in what we do. And because of that, we need to know the beauty of working with our kids and Gen Z. So let's go to another question. When you think of Gen Z, what is the first word that comes to your mind? Is it confused? Is it lazy? Is it creative? Or is it disconnected? Disconnected, okay. Indifferent, confused. Seeing a lot of disconnected and confused. Creative, I love it. Okay, so I'm seeing a mix, which is good. Oh, I like that, Nick. Deconnected, but in the wrong way. All right, well, that's good. So hopefully this webinar can answer some of those questions and maybe give us a different perspective. So, one more question for you all. What do you think is the biggest challenge with Gen Z today? Is it lack of motivation? Is it constant phone use? Is it emotional mental health needs? Is it disengagement in the class? Or do you think it's something else? I'm curious to see that. Two, phone use, lack of motivation, emotional mental health needs. One and three, yes. Okay. Okay. Definitely seeing a lot of emotional mental health. Unclear expectations. I love it. Okay. We're getting somewhere. So that's good. I think, again, it's really important that we have a better understanding of what we think about the generation. And again, hopefully this webinar can kind of create a better picture with that. So, one of the reasons why I created this presentation was solely because of a TED Talk that I watched a few months ago. If you know anything about Simon Sinek, he is a business leader, and he made a TED Talk about this generation. And when I was listening to it, there was this quote that he said that really sat with me, and it kind of sparked these emotions of trying to really create a better picture of Gen Z. And he says, this generation is less equipped to deal with stress versus previous generations. And while so many people have different thoughts about that, some think that he's right, some people think he's wrong. And I think it does lead to a conversation of what exactly does it mean to be less equipped? What exactly does it mean to be less equipped with dealing with stress? And I'll have some statistics to show actually that this generation is more equipped, but are also dealing with higher levels of stress than ever before. So let's get into meeting Gen Z. Who exactly is Gen Z? I actually found out over the past few months that I am not a part of Gen Z. For the longest time, I thought I was. I was born in 1995. Gen Z starts off in 1997 to 2012. They are our first digital natives. Some of those people are actually some of your colleagues right now. They could be teachers or counselors in your school today. They are adaptive. They're smart. They're passionate. They love social media. They have online communities such as Discord. They love memes and humor. They're very diverse and creative, socially aware, and they're very tech savvy and resourceful. When you think of cons that come with this generation, a lot of them do deal with anxiety and depression. You would often hear them talk about being overstimulated or struggling with mental health. They are often struggling with comparing and being overwhelmed. And they also have low trust in institutions. The reason why is because the system that they believe is currently happening is not beneficial to them in their growth. And we will discuss that in just a bit. But the one thing I want to mention here is that they're actually no different than many of us today. They're not the outlier, they're the mirror. And what we notice in Gen Z when we think about high screen time and short attention span and easily being overwhelmed and struggling with productivity, a lot of us as adults can honestly say that we deal with the same things. A lot of us constantly check phone for different reasons, whether we have responsibilities or not. We can often struggle with distraction and wanting to multitask, which also goes hand in hand with a short attention span. Many of us deal with burnout and stress, especially in the area of education, and a lot of us can have a difficulty in staying focused. And so the biggest question that I think we need to ask ourselves is it a Gen Z problem or is it a human problem? And to me, I think it's a human problem. And because of that, I think Gen Z doesn't get the same grace that adults do. And I understand that as we get a little bit older, responsibilities come about. We have different things to keep in mind. We have things to manage, especially here as educators, but we're literally doing the same things that Gen Z do. We tell kids not to be on our phones. We do on our phones all the time. We wake up on our phones. We check notifications. Our day is immediately being altered, no different than Gen Z. The only difference is that adults are not being labeled lazy for doing the same thing that our teenagers are doing. And the most important thing to remember is that every student that we deal with is carrying something, whether they have the highest of grades or they're stellar athletes, they're all carrying something. So I want to do one quick activity with you all. You give me the first word that you're thinking about. When you think of a high achieving student, what do you think that they're possibly carrying? Stress, pressure, discipline, pressure, anxiety. Seeing a common theme here, fear, expectations. Again, when we go into the concept of overwhelming our students, think about a high achieving kid, even though he does well in the classroom or he excels on the field, etc. Maybe that pressure is the fear of failure because of the repercussions that may come from that. We have to keep in mind that when we have our kids at school on a daily basis, we don't know what they deal with outside of school. We don't know why the reasons why they're achieving these things at a high rate. And to be honest, in my experience, some of my highest achieving kids are the kids that struggle with anxiety and depression the most. Next one. Curious about this one. When you see a class clown, what do you think they're carrying? need for attention, anxiety, insecurity, need for connection, attention deficit, anger, uncertainties, loneliness. I like that one. It can be a multitude of things. Sometimes the behavior is telling a story without us truly understanding. We got to think about it. When we have kids that are doing different things, there's always a need for attention. Some of our favorite kids sometimes are the kids that stress us out the most because deep down inside, we know there's something more that they need from us. And then last one, the star athlete. What do you think they're carrying? Pressure, pressure, expectations, pressure to perform. Confidence. I like that one. The stress of multitasking. All these things can be true. And again, it goes back to the concept that all of our kids are carrying things, whether it is inside the classroom or not. So thank you all for participating with that. The main thing I want to point out is the concept of labeling and the dangers of it. What does it do? When you label a child, it begins to make the student believe in the label itself. It can lower the self-confidence and the self-worth. It can also lead to acting in alignment with the label. That is one of the biggest things that I've learned, not only as a counselor, but also my first year being a psychology instructor. When you give students a different sense of expectation outside of the label they've been given, you'd be very surprised on how they're willing to change what we think about them. The other thing I want to point out is that it ignores the why behind the behavior. I think sometimes as educators, when we get into the nitty-gritty of things, and especially when the school year gets busy, especially the second half of the school year, when we have so much that is going on, and we're just trying to get to the finish line, we're trying to get our seniors done, all these different things. Sometimes when certain students are doing different things, we're ignoring the why. Is it solely our responsibility to do that alone? No, but again, as educators, our job is to continue to be curious and find ways to connect with our kids. And so when we ignore the why behind the behavior, sometimes we allow the label to stand stronger than what it actually can be. And lastly, it damages the trust between the student and the educator. I think one of my greatest strengths here as a counselor is my ability to build relationships. Even for the students that have been labeled different things such as lazy or disruptive, sometimes I have taken the time to understand the student just on a personal level outside of the label because I get a better chance to know about them on a deeper level and find ways to really connect with them to understand more of their problems. When we label a student, again, we stop being curious about them. Now, let's address the other elephant in the room.
We have to ask ourselves,
Profoundly.
are they simply lazy?
Or are we failing to adapt to their paradigm?
I think when I made this video, thank you for AI with this, it was something that I've always wanted to ask. It's just a group of educators. And it's one of the things I asked during the youth conference. Are we failing to shift to their paradigm? Because when you really think about it, is Gen Z actually lazy? Some will say no, because it depends on what we mean by lazy. Lazy could be viewed as a disguise of being overwhelmed, being burnt out, and being dysregulated. And that's not laziness itself, it's load. All the different capacities and the different things that students are dealing with inside and outside the classroom can show up in a way, often in the stages of avoidance. And I know many of our intellectual scholars at times, they go through a string of not turning in their homework. And some of it is absolutely by choice. They just didn't want to do it. But if we take the time to ask the question deeper on the inside, it could actually mean because they're overwhelmed. And it doesn't mean that we should always lower our expectations as educators. But if we take the time to have the conversation, we can understand maybe why those things are happening. On the other end, I like to play both sides of the fence. Yes, some students can be lazy. And sure, some students disengage or put in minimal effort at times. But have we ever asked ourselves, have we given the clear expectations that we're actually settling for our kids? Are they clear? Are they consistent? And do they actually know what success looks like? And sure, many of us will argue that yes, they've been in school for all these years. They understand the standard, the mission, all these things. And while that can be true, has it been clearly defined in a way for them to truly understand? Again, I am of the belief that if we sometimes have to repeat ourselves, even if we don't want to, we can do that to really connect with them in a way for them to understand. We can minimize our chances of labeling a kid. So we set those clear expectations, even if they have moments of being defiant. They will eventually catch on, in my belief, that what we're asking for them, and they will hold themselves more accountable. I want to shift over a little bit. One of the things in my area of research and learning about this is that Gen Z is going through something called a polycrisis. And it's not necessarily just one crisis at all, it is many at the same time. And truthfully, that nervous system can never catch a break in dealing with many crises at the same time. And my response to people who say Gen Z is lazy, I respond back, how can we consider a generation lazy when they were born into convenience? They were given these devices. As we have found ways to advance the technology as human beings, and we found ways to simplify our businesses and a way to connect, we have also it also provided more convenience and access to kids. Yes, some would argue that that is the problem, but it also benefits a lot of us as adults on a day-to-day basis. I think this picture really stood out to me because, again, a lot of us that may have kids or nephews or nieces or grandkids, we often give a tablet before they fully be able to comprehend themselves. And so a lot of kids are getting access to technology before they're 2 years old, and they know how to work a remote by the time they're 3 years old. And again, that is the world that they've been entered into. And sure, some people will say, well, maybe we need to stop giving them phones. That helps to a degree. But at some point, a lot of schools that they go into, they use technology on a day-to-day basis. Yes, you can limit screen time. You can do all these different things to mitigate these moments. But the truth is that advancement of technology is here and it's only going to continue to advance. And so again, my question is how can we label a generation that is born into convenience? It was never their fault. Gen Z did not wake up one day and build this themselves. They were born into it. So what exactly are we teaching Gen Z in my perspective? And I think this is one of the reasons why the lazy label often gets thrown out. We teach Gen Z sometimes to avoid anything hard. Think about conversations that you've had with students or maybe your own child. As naturally as people, we are going to want to protect people from the hard things. And so sometimes in our own way, whether we've done it unconsciously or consciously, we have told them that struggle is dangerous. On the other end as well, we've also said that your worth is based on success, and anything less than that is failure. So going back to the student experience that I shared, a lot of those students are dealing with the pressure of failing. Think about your high achieving kids that have never received a B in their life. In the moment that they get a B, pay attention to how they responded. And sure, some people will think that is a good thing to see that they have some fear behind that. But if we think about it on a deeper level, if some students feel like if they make a mistake, they're not really they're not worth the things that they think they're supposed to be worth to. On the other end as well, when you think about worth and failing and succeeding, if you're failing, you're also failing behind others. And sometimes we're telling them that everyone else is better than you. This generation is big on a comparison basis. Everything that they do is rooted in a highlighted driven culture. Everything that they see is based off of comparison to highlights of others. So if they see another 16-year-old kid making a lot of money doing the things that they would love to do, and they're not doing it, they're comparing themselves to markers of highlights. And we have to remind people that everybody's timing is different. But again, you're competing with two worlds. You have the digital world, you have reality itself. Their world is microwavable. Everything they see, think comes in nanoseconds. You can look up anything they would like to at any moment in time. You're dealing with that every day. The other thing too, going to the microwave culture, we're also teaching them to get stuff and feel better fast. If you're struggling, we can buy it right away. If you, just no difference, a lot of these kids that are big into video games. I'm a video game guy myself, so it's a conversation I have with them. A lot of video games today are pay to play. In order to be good now, I can now buy a certain amount of V-Bucks, VC, etc., and my player can automatically get to a certain level without having to do the work. Again, how can we label a generation that is born into convenience in different ways? So again, getting stuff to feel better fast. And then lastly, and this is a real big one that I've seen, and I don't think it's every student, but I think we have not truthfully given kids the opportunity to fail and fail forward. So sometimes they avoid making their own choices because when in doubt, panic and they will help. So, from an educational piece, what has changed? A couple of things that I've mentioned. And while some of these things can be true as far as evaluation, I still think it plays a role into what has simplified a lot of our students. Again, it doesn't, to me, it doesn't make them lazy. They just simply adapted to the way that the world has worked. So, as obvious, grades became currency. Everything in education is based off of grades and test score. We know that. On the second end, speed and perfection rule. Now it's not only how fast you get a grade in, sometimes it's how fast you get an assignment then. And then lastly, the third one, AI rewrote the rules. Think how much ChatGPT has literally became a big part of our educational system. While many of us are combating that, there's a new AI system being generated every single day, and kids are finding new ways to use it. Nobody sat back and told kids what is the proper and ethical way to use AI. And now that we're at a point where every kid is using AI, we're saying it is their problem, but we never gave them the rules behind it. So what actually happened is that we standardized everything and we using evidence over depth. We're testing over thinking. We're optimizing for speed and we're gamifying performance. And then lastly, we're digitizing the process. Tools became shortcuts and process became less visible than results. So why did education move this way? It was to scale, in my opinion. It was to scale more students for fewer resources. I'm aware that every school in the country does not have the same resources to provide all the proper resources for all our kids. On the other end, too, again, technology acceleration. Tools promise speed. I use AI for a lot of things. So I understand it's a very convenience-based thing. I cannot get mad at kids for using the same thing that I use. Yes, we need to teach them the proper guidance behind it, but again, they're literally going off of what they see and know. The economic pressure that we often don't talk about as well. A lot of these jobs and businesses are using job rate outputs, and we're now competing with, again, robotic system of thinking versus development thinkers. So what did this shift do to the learner? It struggled. Any struggle started to feel like failure. Thinking started to feel inefficient. And then learning started to feel like a constant evaluation. So I want to stay with the AI piece for a second. I've done several presentations on this along with AI in education. And the question becomes, for the teacher, how do you stop the cheating in AI use? And I wish I could tell you verbatim how to do it. I think for me, it is to promote understanding and focus on learning and memorizing and using real world problems and open book tasks. Again, at the end of the day, there's literally a different system being made every day that kids are learning about. I remember when I was in high school in 2010 to 2013, MathWave was like the coolest thing that we all saw. But you just plugged in a couple math problems and then I was able to find the answer. On the back end, like I tell many of my students, when there is an opportunity to work on a math problem, if you continuously use AI and you don't know how to properly use the formula, you're going to show the failure in the results of a test. So even though kids think they found a shortcut to it, they still have to recognize that you still have to know how to work these things out. I think for me, from a psychological standpoint, in my psychology class, I'm big on reflection and conversation. I ask for opinions. I'm big on public speaking and projects. I'm big on reflection journals, or more so vocal reflection. Using class discussion, explain your thinking, use group work, oral explanations. And I know every subject you name may not be able to do that the same way. And again, I just think it's a way to minimize it because it's not going nowhere. Build integrity and trust. Talk about why it matters, honestly. I think sometimes as educators, we just tell our students why it's a problem without fully going in depth for them to truly understand. Also, let's celebrate the efforts and not just the grade. Even if a student struggles, let's find a way to be positive and helping them feel encouraged to fail forward again. And then lastly, teach AI responsibility, as I know many of us are doing. Let's use AI as a tool and not a shortcut. Let's think first. Now, I know some educators in here is like, this man's talked a lot, he's saying a lot. Now, where's the data? So, a couple things. I want to start off with Gen Z and career choices of what Gen Z currently wants. They want purposeful careers, flexible pathways, good pay, and stability. I think remote work became a thing, obviously, post-COVID. That's something that a lot of our, uh, myself and other people in that space, we were understanding why it became a thing. But a lot of Gen Z people want to feel very flexible in the things that they do. What are they facing? I think the biggest thing we're failing to realize is that they're facing job market uncertainty. In 2030, I know you've seen many statistics that a lot of AI automation jobs are going to take over what a lot of people have had the opportunity to do in the past. So you got to think about it. 60% of people currently are worried about job security. And for Gen Z, 58% of them are expected to change careers multiple times. What does that look like? Well, the rising cost of education and the value of a degree, why I always believe it's valuable and I always stress it, a traditional bachelor's degree now looks a lot different than it did 20, 30 years ago. And what does that look like for the job market today? So a lot of these kids have aspirations of being entrepreneurs or streamers. Streaming is becoming a big thing. Content creators are becoming a big thing. They want to feel good in what they do. They want to feel fulfilled. And I think a lot of times, because we have given them a very rigid pathway of what we think success is, they are starting to see me because of other people, the comparison culture, things that they're, you know, connected to online that they're trying to shift a little bit. But truthfully, I just think it's because of the rise of AI, the rise of AI and automation. A lot of these kids are trying to be a little more strategic when it comes to the careers. So if you look at a study, 1 in 4 say that college is currently worth the cost. I think that's a fair argument to say. While I think, again, college is a very vital tool, again, for a traditional undergraduate degree, a lot of kids are going to potentially take on a lot of student debt that they're asking themselves, is it worth it? Now let's transition to the social dilemma. Again, the biggest part of Gen Z, and I think why uh, the whole lazy label comes into play is because of how connected they are to the world. And then truthfully, we are today's students. Everybody is. And the world is the product. Why do Gen Z often feel overstimulated? For a few reasons. I think it's a constant input. It's multiple screens throughout the day. It's the infinite scroll with no off switch. It's the constant notifications. It's the social pressure. As I mentioned, comparison 24/7 and the pressure to feel like they need to respond fast. And then lastly, fear of missing out and being judged. Again, a lot of our students are consistently rather they are on their phones outside of school. When they have free time, they're constantly judging themselves on what they should be doing. And also, their social media platforms are a big part of their identity. They don't feel connected without it. Imagine how many kids, I'm sure you've heard in conversation, talk about the need to post something for Instagram or to post something for their TikToks, or you've seen kids do TikTok dances, etc. There's a constant social need to follow the trends. On the other end, they also have overpacked lives. Many of them are heavy in academics. They have several sports clubs, jobs, trainings. A lot of kids are, investing in different trainers from an athletic standpoint. And when you think about it, most of us don't always have real downtime when they actually have a time to deal with things and really just process the days go on. Also, again, overpacked lives, the world stress, the economy, all those things, the emotion, anxiety, identity stress, family and cultural pressures. And then lastly, I think number six is probably the most true of them all is the no true rest. I don't think a lot of these kids sleep. I think a lot of these kids can struggle with insomnia from late phone use. There's no mental reset again. This entire wheel continues to happen over and over. And so for me, it's not laziness. It is constant stimulation without recovery. The dopamine receptors are essentially fried on a day-to-day basis, which is why they lose focus. So where are they mostly spending their time? They're spending their time on a few platforms. TikTok is 83% of usage, YouTube is 90%, Instagram is 70, 89%, and then Snapchat is still pretty big as well. It goes back to the disconnected piece. I think somebody mentioned that earlier. They are disconnected. They're not disconnected. They're just connected differently. And again, the biggest part of it is because of the social media platforms. And as I mentioned, the comparison trap. Imagine the conversations a lot of students have had in your hallways, walking past them on a day-to-day basis, trying to understand what exactly it means to truly be themselves. They don't know. I think this picture really shows the value in that. Again, when a lot of kids are using phones and they're, doing things at different angles and they're showing just a part of the lifestyle, they're not showing the true picture. But the consumer, the person on their phone, is instantly making a judgment of comparison based off what they think it should be. So a lot of these kids are struggling to figure out what is real and what is not. They just want to do the things that make them feel good at the end of the day. Now, I want to talk about the mental health crisis piece, because I think this is very important. Some of these studies go as recent as 2023. So in 2022, over 60% of college students met the criteria for at least one mental health issue. According to the CDC, suicide is the third leading cause of death among high school students. In 2023, study by the CDC, 1 in 5 students experience a mental health disorder every year. And in 2023 as well, teen anxiety and depression increased 50% since 2010. That was 3 years ago. And so the biggest thing we have to keep in mind is that they are constantly living in this bubble of pressure, and ignoring this won't make it go away. Now, to comparison to 2025, Gen Z reported from age 12 to 24, 46% of them feel depressed, 25 plus, 20% of them reported feeling depressed. Nearly half of Gen Z report feeling depressed versus one in every 5 adults. Again, when you have overstimulation, you have constant comparison, this is the result that we get. So, as we wrap up, a few things I want to mention. First thing is that we have so much to learn. And with this as a webinar, this was genuinely just an idea to create a conversation. I think for me, studying Gen Z should be more about understanding them as people versus treating them like a subject. I think it's very dangerous of the ways that we can label them, and they truly are our future. Again, many of them right now are some of our colleagues and contemporaries. They'll be leading our schools. They'll be making the changes in our schools. We really have to understand who we are connecting with to build a better world for them. Also, a few things to remember. Compassion is not lowering the bar. We should always continue to have high standards. Deadlines still matter, the efforts still matter, but how we support changes how we reach the student. Yes, some students avoid the work. That's not new. Students have always avoided hard things, but let's face it today, students are dealing with constant digital noise, high performance pressure, they're dealing with less mental rest, and the behavior looks the same, but the load is heavier. Supporting is not coddling, it's skill building. We still must teach them time management, focus, persistence, and self-regulation. The behavior can look the same. And again, the load is heavier. And then lastly, 'cause I'm really big on this, accountability still matters, but context changes how we apply it. Accountability should not always equal punishment. It should be teaching them skills. It should be teaching them expectations. We cannot assume that all of our students know everything about what we expect from them. I remember in my psychology class a couple of weeks ago, it was the only time this happened where the kids got to me and we had a conversation and I somebody said something and it really stood out to me. Like it really made me understand them a little bit more. And they said outside of sports, I've never really been told a clear expectation of what is expected of me as a student. I was always told I was bad. That changed my perspective. It made me understand that yes, I can have expectations. I can also still meet them with love. I can also be compassionate and I should also be able to help them build capacity. I shouldn't just always enforce compliance because I'm the teacher, I'm the adult. Accountability asks what skill is missing, not just what rule is broken. So I think that is important to remember. And as educators, please remember your lantern before you judge. Let's light the way. Our job is to see the whole student, understand the load, build trust and belonging. Let's support the student through the mind, body, and spirit, and light the pathway forward. They're not lazy, they're just carrying a lot. Let's help them rise. I appreciate you all for listening. Thank you all so much. And if you all have any questions, I'll be here for a bit.
Thank you, Rashad. I'm going to replace your screen.
Do I need to
Nope, you're all set. Thank you so much for your insights, the ideas to better understanding our Gen Z students and all that they carry, and how we, as Lasallian educators, are called to help them navigate this challenging aspect of young adulthood. I'm checking out the chat now. I'm not seeing any questions, so we'll move forward. But thank you again for everyone for being here. If you have any questions, please see that Rashad has shared his email, so you can reach out to him with any other questions or comments about tonight, this presentation, and our Gen Z students. As we look ahead, please make sure to mark your calendars for Monday, May 4th at 6 p.m. Eastern, 3 p.m. Pacific, as we welcome Brother George Van Grieken as he explores three pivotal moments in the history of the Institute of the Brothers of the Christian Schools. Drawing from his book, Holy Audacity, A Short History of the Lasallian Charism and Mission, this webinar will highlight how faith, zeal, and association were continually adapted to new realities and invite participants to reflect on what this legacy of holy audacity means for Lasallian schools, communities, and ministries today. If you have any other ideas or feedback on today's webinar or future webinars, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Sarah Layton, as we'd love to hear from you. Thank you all for joining us today for this webinar. And as always, live Jesus in our hearts forever.